Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Anna and today I will be talking about Claude Monet. Oscar Claude Monet was born on November 14th, 1840 in Paris. When he was 5, he moved to Le Havre, and growing up, his father wanted him to go into the family business. They owned a grocery store, but instead he wanted to be an artist. Monet absolutely hated school, and he would always run away to the cliffs and the sea, and even once said that he will be buried in a boyo. He said, when talking about the sea, I should like to be always near it or on it. When he was at school, he would draw caricatures of the teachers, but they're kind of disrespectful. But he was actually known for his charcoal caricatures and sold them for 20 francs to save money, which is like $21. In 1857, when he was 16 years old, his mother died and he dropped out of school and went to live with his aunt. In 1861, when he was 21 years old, he joined the 1st Regiment of African Light Cavalry in Algeria, which is basically an army that was stationed in Algeria. Monet was supposed to serve 7 years, but instead he only served 2 after contracting typhoid fever and being forced to return home. He went back to Paris and he actually became a student of Charles Gleyre. Here he started experimenting more, and then he eventually developed his Impressionist style, where he started playing around with color and light, and he even met his muse Camille Dancieux. Camille Dancieux was actually the woman that modeled The Woman in the Green Dress, or La Femme à la Robe Verte, and this was the painting that kind of made Claude Monet known. And Camille was actually his future wife and inspired many more paintings. In 1868, Dancieux became pregnant and Monet's first son, John, was born later that year. But in the same year, Monet attempted to commit suicide by jumping into the Seine River due to financial frustrations. After overcoming that obstacle, Monet married Camille, and then they moved to England following the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. And from there on, they traveled around Europe to places like Zaandam and Amsterdam to basically find more landscapes to paint. And from traveling, he came with about 30 new paintings. In 1871, a year later, he moved back to France, and 3 years later, his painting Impression Soleil Levant was hung in the first Impressionist exhibition in 1874. This exhibition was faced with a lot of critiques. Louis Leroy called Monet an impressionist, and meaning to demean his art, but instead it actually became an art movement. In this time period, society favored realism and portraits relating to famous people, political people, and history. This made Monet an outcast who painted people like Camille and his son and beautiful landscapes using loose yet rough brushstrokes, and he experimented with light and color. After this, Camille's health started to deteriorate. In 1878, the Monets have another child, Michel Monet, and the pregnancy actually made Camille's health worsen even more, and she eventually died a year later in 1879 of pelvic cancer. Monet paints her one last time in one of his most poignant pieces, Camille on her deathbed. After her death, Claude Monet and his children started living with the Hochedus. Ernest Hochedus was a collector who supported Monet's work, and he actually brought increased money flow to the family, so Monet planted a large garden, which became the subject of most of his paintings, and dealing with the grief and the loss of Camille, he creates some of the most influential paintings of the century. Then, when he has enough money, he actually marries Alice Hochedis, and he actually buys the house and the surrounding land to make a bigger greenhouse and a bigger garden. He eventually formed cataracts on his eyes, and he made a series of paintings with his cataracts, and then once he got surgery on his eyes, he started making other paintings without his cataracts. But Monet eventually died of lung cancer on December 5th, 1926, when he was 86 years old. He is buried in the Gavarnie Church Cemetery. When talking about his art, he would say, "Everyone discusses my art and pretends to understand, as if it were necessary to understand, when it is simply necessary to love."